Hey guys, I'm going to talk about today in Social Studies 30. So today we talked about rights and rights legislation. And so we know that legislation is essentially rules or laws that are made. And so we talked about some rights legislation, and these are rights which are created in order to preserve individual and collective rights. And so individual rights are rights that apply to individuals like you and I. Collective rights are rights that apply to groups. And the purpose why we have collective rights is in order to make sure that every single person has got the exact same opportunity, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their background. And so the first piece of rights legislation we talked about is the US Bill of Rights. And so the Bill of Rights essentially is created by the Founding Fathers. And one of the things it does is essentially it outlines these Enlightenment ideas like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and so on. And the Founding Fathers were so focused on limiting the role of government, on negative freedom. And so we see with the Declaration, with the Bill of Rights, which is built into the US Constitution, essentially this focus on individualism. However, in Canada, we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which was put into place in 1982. And so what the Charter of Rights and Freedom does is essentially lays out Canadian rights, and it's a little bit more collective. It's a little bit of a heavier focus on positive freedom, more than liberal ideas. And what it tries to do is it tries to find this balance between individual and collective rights. It's got it mentions special groups like language communities, English, French, and Aboriginal groups, because of their special place in Canadian history. And so we also talked about the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, which essentially is like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but specifically for Quebec, because Quebec feels like they got a special culture that needs to be preserved. And so last thing we talked about is balancing the common good and individual rights. So things like affirmative action. And some of the critics of affirmative action say this essentially reverse discrimination because minorities and women are given preferential treatment over the dominant culture and men. And so it's also, we just talked about how it is that liberal countries sometimes do illiberal things, such as France or Quebec with the banning of religious symbolism. And so that's a quick review of what we talked about today. This is not comprehensive. Please make sure you go over your notes. See you guys tomorrow.